Hi, welcome to our session on preventing the summer slide. Activities to keep kids sharp all summer. My name is Maria Pia Ulrich. I am the Multicultural Coordinator for Successful Innovations. Thank you so much for joining us today. So today we're going to talk about what the summer slide is. We are going to talk about reading activities, everyday math. We're gonna talk about learning through experience and setting goals. Let's go ahead and really quick start with a video. I'm sure if you have kiddos, you may have seen this theme song before.
There's another 104 days of summer vacation, and school comes along just to end it. So the annual problem for our generation is finding a good way to spend it. Like then you're fighting a mommy, you're finding a peaceful town. Discovering something that doesn't exist, or giving a monkey a shower. Serpentine ways, creating nanobots or locating Frankenstein. Finding a dodo bird, painting a continent, sister insane. As you can see, there's a whole lot of stuff to do before school starts this fall. So stick with us, cause Phineas and Ferb are gonna do it. Just stick with us, cause Phineas and Ferb are gonna do it all.
Mom! Phineas and Ferb are making a title sequence!
So, the theme song, if you really listen to those lyrics, it says there's 130 days of summer vacation. That is a long time for summer, that there's so many things that can happen. So, what do you notice your kids end up doing during the summertime? So, if you are watching this session remotely, I recommend you to go ahead and pause the video and write out what do you notice about that summer vacation for your kids? What ends up happening with them? How do they spend those 130 something days? Okay. So our goals today for this webinar is to understand and recognize what the summer slide is, learn practical ways to maintain academic skills, and discover this engaging, low stress summer activities to do at home. And we are going to talk about specific resources and start thinking of the summer learning plan that we can work at home. And it doesn't have to be very complex, so we'll have an example about that. Let's go ahead and start with the summer slide. What is it? The summer slide is the idea of summer learning loss. Studies in the 1970s and the 80s show that test scores usually flatten during the summer and they were not growing when they came back in the middle of August, which makes sense if you were not doing those activities for that long period of time. Chances are that you were forgetting it. The idea of if you don't use it, you lose it. The drops usually were higher for math and ELA. This was a topic of debate. The summer slide topic is actually also known as the summer learning loss. It is such a debated topic right now because of two factors. The summer break is very long compared to other school districts around the world, to other schools' expectations. And in addition to that, we had the COVID pandemic. A lot of test scores went down, a lot of kiddos went to remote learning, and remote learning was not working for them. It did not work. It didn't do well. So now, even though it has been 5, 6 years of that pandemic where it really was at its peak, we still see the decrease in learning of the students. So it's very much debated. It's like, how can we catch up? Or we're consistently talking about how we can fix that. So this is what we're hoping the webinar can give pointers or ideas. Okay. So let's talk about principles to consider when you're thinking about the summer learning for your kiddo. Always, 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 the first step would be reach out to the school, see what opportunities are available. Every school district is different. It is its own governing body. So each school district has different opportunities and different things available for your kid for their grade level. Or if they have a specific goal, then that goal um, will be reflected in the summer opportunity learning opportunities available. For instance, in my kiddos' school, they have a program where they really want to implement cultural exchange. So they do offer summer school, but the summer school is very specific in the sense of is it's a plan to be able to have this um cultural exchange. So then the week of summer school that they have available for the kids is specific for that cultural learning, and it focuses on that country, and it focuses on a host teacher from that country teaching that. Then I remember years ago, what I mean years ago, I mean last year, last summer, my sons had the opportunity to join a theater club because one of the schools that my youngest went to had a theater summer school program. So those opportunities are available there. We just have to definitely reach out. So keeping those things in mind, remember that the students are that our kiddos are under the impression that it's summer, so it's supposed to be light and fun. And it can be light and fun, but it can also promote exploration and curiosity and learning. So it is very important to foster those things, to make it enjoyable for them, to make the learning in such a way that they want to pursue it. So the first thing that I will say is consistency. Consistency is key. Those small little habits of doing that one thing can make a huge difference. For instance, if your child's goal is to be able to read at a higher level or to increase a reading level, then 15, 20, 30 minutes of reading. I wouldn't go past 30, especially if you have a kiddo at home that really does not enjoy the subject, because what you want to do is that a small amount can make a bigger impact later on, because the key is to have effective practices. Now, follow your child's interest. This is a great opportunity to learn as they're doing sports, as they're exploring nature, as they're exploring art, as they are doing technology, as they are curious about characters and stories or movies, cooking, animals, all of those things. This is a perfect opportunity to actually take a different step forward and encourage independent choice, where they are co-partners in the learning with you, and they are about owning their own learning goals. And I think that is important, especially during the summer, because you want them to be engaged throughout the process. So if you decide, hey, during this summertime, I want you to practice on your algebra skills, and you have your workbook. Great. How many minutes are you doing per day? If you're doing a whole hour, or if you're doing one or two problems at a time. If you're doing 20 minutes, let's see what we can get accomplished in 20 minutes. Now, that makes a difference. Now, let's go ahead and talk about reading activities and go beyond that worksheet. So let's start with lower elementaries. If your kiddo is kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, think about it this way. In kindergarten and first grade, and sometimes second grade, they're still doing connections of the sounds, the letters, the vowels. So there is a great opportunity called Alpha Blocks, and it is a program specific for phonemes and learning the sounds. So you can also YouTube them, and they talk about the letters and they give ideas of how to review the sounds. So if you click on the letter A says ah. When an apple falls on her head, ah. And it also has videos that go along with it. So reviewing those sounds. The cat, b, and it makes and the letters make those sounds. Go back to the top. It also has episodes on how they teach and it goes by level, the ABCs. And then if you have a first grader, beginning of second grader, they're blending stuff. Here's this opportunity where there's an example. Uh, it's I'm out of the region, but you can also look them up in YouTube and it will play the video. All right, so let's see if we can play this without the ads.
We can laugh, we can sing,
And it goes on and on and on. And that is something that you can explore during the summer with your kiddos. Then we can talk about the patterns and spaces where letters are. So if you are driving around and you see the sign for McDonald's, the opportunity to go ahead and say, hey, what do you see right there? What is that sign? What does that mean? Oh, that's McDonald's. They're recognizing stuff. If, especially for the kindergartners, that is so important. If you see Wendy's, that is the beginning of reading in the sense of like, I'm attaching a meaning to a picture because that's what we do with letters. We attach the sound to the letter. So talking about those letters recognitions, visiting your local library, that is such a huge thing to do. And also places like Barnes and Nobles have great incentives to have you read. Barnes and Nobles is not a library by no means, it is a business, but they usually have a summer program. The kiddos can go and read and make it fun and then exchange it to get a book. So that immediate reward. But the local library also has um, ideas of story time for kiddos. They have contest of like guess how much we have in this box or trivia, and that helps start thinking about it. Also, very important, read with your kiddos when they're in lower elementary during the summer, or listen to audiobooks or podcasts. There is a great podcast called for lower elementary kids. It is called Story Pirates, and I'm gonna pull it up right here. The Story Pirates podcast is wonderful because what they do is they'll take stories from kids, and kids will write the stories, and it'll be silly, and they bring them to life in podcasts. So you can listen to it and wherever you listen your podcast at.
Welcome back to Story Love, where we take stories written by kids and then we talk about them.
That's exactly what this is.
That's right. We get tens of.
Everybody screamed. They hid under the blankets.
So that way they what is wonderful about this podcast is that story pirates go on and respond to every single one of the stories the kids send. So they have this medium which is Story Love, where they read the story from the kids and they'll show you what the story is and they'll talk about it. They have the other medium, which is the Story Pirate itself, where they'll bring a silly story to life from kids. The sillier it is, the um how it comes to life in the podcast. So it is wherever you listen your podcast at. Okay, let's go ahead. So elementary and middle schoolers, when we're talking about reading with them, we want to really look at the incentives of the local library, because the local library will go ahead and divide it by grade levels and age groups as well. And I will recommend during the summer, if you have the opportunity, to pick a book that you guys can read together and talk about it in a book club kind of style. That is huge. If you guys are reading the book together and then you guys are able to share what the book is about, that makes a difference. A book that we chose in my family was Percy Jackson, The Lightning Thief. So that is a very heavy book, but my kids were older and we did the book and we also did the audiobook. So we had this open-ending questions and we talked about it. And they will read it for 20 minutes or we will do the audiobook and then we will have these discussions. And most important, have them retell you the story. Like, what is the key points that they got from the story and why that was interesting? What is their predictions? And connect those books to real life experiences. For example, going back to Percy Jackson. Yes, my kids are not demigods, but what is it that you can relate to with the character? You can relate with the feeling of feeling alienated because you're not doing well in school, or the feeling of feeling proud because you were able to help a friend. So talking about those real life experiences and connections. And you also want to go ahead and encourage them to journal, to make stories, to write stories based on pictures. Sometimes what we can do as well is we can grab a newspaper. Some newspapers are free, other ones they cost a couple dollars. Based on a picture. You get a newspaper, you see the picture right here. What is it that you notice about the picture? What do you notice about this picture? Go ahead and write a story. Or you see the story, how would you change it? There is National Geographic Kids, there's Times for Kids. I'm going to go ahead and pull those up for us really quick. And going to go ahead and explore for kids. And you can pick the grade level. If you're talking upper elementary, if you're talking to your middle schoolers, they have very interesting stories that they will go ahead and enjoy. Okay. And now let's talk about our high schoolers. Our high schoolers definitely encourage a chapter book to read together. Then if you're traveling or you're going somewhere, encourage those audiobooks so they can be the discussion piece. The podcast. If you listen to a podcast together, podcast have you chosen to listen? What do you find interesting? There is a podcast that we will listen together, and it is called The Cabinet, the story, The Cabinet of Stories. And then you can go ahead and the Cabinet of Curiosities. You can go ahead and listen together and have that discussion. Then encourage them to write stories. Or if we go on vacation, how will you plan this vacation? What would you do? Or could you maybe write a story for a magazine or a newspaper, what is the purpose of writing? You can create a writing group with your high schoolers together and join the reading competitions that they have available. Join those writing groups. Now let's talk about everyday math opportunity. For everyday math opportunity, there's different things to do. If you have younger kiddos, sing songs about quantities because right now they're trying to associate the number and the quantity. And if you can talk about what adding means, hey, look, we have a couple of sodas here. I have two sodas, and then dad brought three more sodas, and then your sister took one soda. How many sodas do we have? Right there, you're incorporating math in the sense of addition and subtraction. Cooking, it is such an amazing opportunity to talk about measuring items as well as fractions because sometimes the recipes require you, if you want to do a batch of two things, it requires you to multiply those fractions. So how do you do that? What do you end up with? Now, choosing to travel or planning a vacation with your family, they have to look at the map and look at the distances. They have to think about elapsed time. If we arrive to the hotel at this time, what time are we leaving? And just having them think about, okay, this much time has passed. What is that elapsed time? Okay, we'll end at this time. Do we have enough time to make it from point A to point B? Also, shopping. If you go grocery shopping, have them budget, have them create a list and write out the prices with you as you're walking down the aisles. If they write out and I know it can sound tedious sometimes, but they have their own notebook, they write out the prices. They can compare what is a better price. And then they'll have if you give them also a calculator, they'll have a calculator to go ahead and compare. What happens if this box right here of mac and cheese is on sale, but there's another box of mac and cheese that is not on sale, but it has more in it, and we eat this much? What would be a better deal for a family and why? Just having those conversation. The best games to apply those math skills are the board games. Monopoly. Monopoly requires you to talk about money. There's Monopoly Junior and there's the regular Monopoly. Requires you to talk about money, add, subtract, make deals. Battleship. Battleship talks about coordinates. You can talk about what coordinate your battleship is at, and then the kids have to go and match it because if they don't match it correctly, they can't really win the game because they can shoot or bomb your battleship. Uno. Uno, it is such a great opportunity to go ahead and see how the patterns are formed. Dominoes. Dominoes is another great thing to go ahead and do. And then there's many other board games that you can go ahead and try to talk about math. So learning through experience. When we're learning through experience, let's really look at what our summer plan is. Would our kiddos be going to a summer camp? Would they be going to a vacation? Would they be doing both? Would they go to community events or would they do all three? Or would they be staying at home? Would they be doing all four? What does that look like? If you're going to summer camp, that is such a wonderful experience. Are you staying locally where you are going to summer camp from 8 to 4 and coming back? Or are you staying overnight? What is that experience like? Can you write a story about it? Can you take pictures? Can you talk about those pictures? Can you investigate if you are out in the wild and you're hiking and you're taking pictures of bugs and plants? Can you investigate what those bugs and plants are? Can you keep a journal of the experience? Even if it's a kindergartner, if they draw a picture or a first grade, they draw a picture and they write a couple sentences underneath those pictures, they are practicing their skills of writing. where they are trying to see what a proper sentence looks like. Are they practicing their capitalization, their period? Now, if you're going on vacation, can you draw about the places that you're going? Can you make a painting? Can you take pictures and make a presentation? Because then that way you're working on those oral skills. The more you're talking, the vocabulary that you're practicing, and those presentations, I'm sure mom and dad, aunt, grandma, cousin, we will give you a feedback of how to, we will just give your input and feedback. And by doing so, we're exchanging vocabulary. We are exchanging ideas. We also need to talk about what is a summer plan for the community? If what activities are you seeing in the museum? What have you learned in the museum? What time did you arrive to the museum? How long were we there? What were the local events that you were doing? Volunteering. How do you volunteer this summer? What were you doing? Then there's websites to explore at home that are helpful during the summer to practice skills. PBS Kids. PBS Kids is such a wonderful opportunity to practice and look around what is going on for the summer learning. So the summer learning, it has stuff for the middle schoolers, the high schoolers, exploring math and engineering, science, nature, art. If you just go ahead and put PBS summer learning, and there's all these activities that you can try out. If you, the wonderful thing about the internet now is that they connect us so much that there's the opportunity to do field trips to museums. So you can do a field trip to a museum and it will take you around. So virtual field, you can just Google virtual field trip to the zoo. The San Diego Zoo comes up and it will go ahead and show you that field trip in videos. You can also do it for the Bronx Zoo, the Macaroni Louisville Kids Zoo. If you wanted to do it for the museums, I would do those type of virtual field trips for my kids because taking it on vacations is very expensive. So can we go see ancient Rome as we're seeing art pieces? Sure, we can do that virtually. And that is a great opportunity to do during the summer. Then there is also startwithabook.org, and it gives you ideas of how to explore those experiences of books. If you go to a national park, when you go to a national park, you can ask for the kids activity. So they have books and guides that you can use. Okay. There is code.org. In code.org, you are able to explore coding over the summer. There is Khan Academy. If your kiddos are practicing a specific skill during the summer, Khan Academy is wonderful for that. There is there's onecommunityglobal.org. It is a summer school lesson plan. This looks extremely overwhelming as you look through it. However, you can click on the pictures and it can give you a better detail of the idea behind it. But you can put a lesson plan and then map for the summer. Oh, it was interactive earlier. Okay. You can click on the science icon and it'll tell you ideas to do during the summer for science, life science, physical science, earth science. And then it talks about the social sciences. And you can explore all of those things. Now, setting goals. It is summer vacation, yes, but we also want them to practice the skills, the knowledge, the stuff that they have learned from school. So we want to keep them sharp. How are we planning to do that? So create a summer learning plan. and it doesn't have to be intensive. It can be three things to do. So start with, what would I like my child to be able to do at the end of the summer? What is my goal for my child? I have two kids. And if you have been part of my previous webinars, you would have heard me that I have two boys, and they happen to be very close in age, in the sense of that now they're both in middle school. But before I had an elementary and a middle schooler, and at one point I'm going to have a middle schooler and a high schooler. But while I'm thinking about that, what might work for one of my sons, it's not going to work for the other one. Or it might be that it works for all of them, for both of them. So I have to think very consciously of how I want to create that summer plan. So here is a very rough idea of what a weekly plan may look like. So when my kids were in elementary school, they could have 3 reading goals. So I would start with either a podcast or a book, depending of whether they were lower elementary and upper elementary. It would be reading for 10 minutes, drawing pictures to retell me a story. Baking cookies could be our math activity. Practicing, I'm practicing those addition, subtractions, multiplication, and division skills. There is a game that is wonderful for multiplication, and it's called the counting game. And you can play it between 2 people. So, 2 or more people. So if you're practicing your tables of 6, what you can do is, let's skip count by 6. So you would go 6, 12, 18, 20, 25. Oh, wait. It should have been 26. Wait a minute. Did we do that correctly? Let's go ahead and talk about that. How did we mess up the counting? What did we do right? The first number is 6, so that works. Then we said 12. That works. Then the next number was 18. Okay, so we're skip counting by 6. We're still good. Okay, but 20 wouldn't work. So we messed up on that counting. So it's just practicing over and over. If you mess up on that number, then you're out, then you lose. So let's try it again, and it gets more competitive. So you go 6, the other person goes 12, 18. Okay, what comes after 18? And then you will see them start counting with their fingers. Okay, I know it's not 22, it's 24. So they go 18, 19, and then that practices skill of skip counting. And then they will go 6, 12, 18, 24. And if you go on a hike, just going to the park, what bugs do you see? Do you see the roly-poly? What do the roly-polies do? That's an adventure on its own. Let's go ahead and research what the purpose of roly-polies are. Roly-polies are able to recycle a lot of other animals' poop. And if you have a little one, when you just say the word poop, they go, ew, ee," and then it's like, or they think it's hilarious because you just said that word. Middle school age. This is how a weekly plan may look like. We might listen to a podcast like Creaking Out. Creaking Out is a podcast from National Geographic that talks about Greek mythology. And then there's a lot of talking. It gives you a warning before the pod of what the podcast is going to be about. And then you can have those conversations with your kids. Okay, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think of the other? And also another thing to do is, which board game are we going to do today and why? What's the purpose behind it? Can we conduct an experiment? And your adventure itself can be writing. Like, let's write about what we did today. Or if you want to write a small story, one of my sons used to love to write scary stories. So he'll sit down and write scary stories in his binder. If you have a high schooler, the audiobook, reading a chapter book, drawing pictures to create their own book. What would that look like? And my high schoolers are like, oh, I don't want to do that. But as they get older, those skills are not as requested from them. So how would that look like for them? And of course, high schoolers, because they're older, they're more detailed on their drawings. They're more detailed on their explanations. Reviewing the study guides for math. What are the expectations from the last class? What next math are you going to be taking? Let's go ahead and review with a board game. Looking into colleges can be an adventure on its own. Looking of, hey, you're in ninth grade. Let's start thinking about what career paths are you thinking about taking. Just going into those websites and looking and researching requires a lot of reading, a lot of critical thinking, and seeing what works for them in the situation. All right, so here's our references. If you have any questions, I'm gonna go ahead and put it to the beginning. Here is my email for any questions. All right. And if you have also questions, you can send them in the chat. If you're here with us today, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you're also welcome to do that. Thank you so much for joining us today on Preventing the Summer Slide Workshop.